Hermann, welcome to the show.
Yeah, how's it, man? Thanks for
Hey,
having me.
yeah, I think you're doing some cool stuff, and I thought this would be a really cool story for listeners to hear about. So yeah, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself? I know you're doing, I had the chance to meet you just briefly at El Salvador in at adopting Bitcoin, and was really interested to hear a bit about what you're doing. And a bit of your story. I've read some of your articles and seen a bit of your what you're tweeting about also. So, do you want to just give us a bit of a background on yourself and how you came to be where you are?
Yeah, man. Well, I'm based in a town which is about 4 hours east of Cape Town. So we're based in Mossel Bay. Um, been using Bitcoin as a means of payment since about 2015. We were hit with sanctions in our business. We cater for overseas tourists. Our market is primarily Russian, Eastern Europe. My wife is Russian. We've been married for about 12 years now. So yeah, and when the first sanctions started to hit, we started using Bitcoin because we couldn't receive payments via bank transfer anymore. Um, and I've just been obsessed with Bitcoin since then because I thought to myself, like, this is a wonderful, wonderful technology that allows you to do what you want to do without governments, for some ridiculous arbitrary purpose cutting you off. I mean, we had nothing to do with the hostilities there, but we were prevented from doing business as a result of it. So
Yeah, and with the
yeah, and it
sanctions,
just
do you
been
mind telling us a little bit about how that happened? Is it mainly just that you couldn't get access to normal banking or that you couldn't receive payments from the customers? Is that what was going on?
Yeah, pretty much, eh? I mean, sort of the stuff that's happening now between Russia and Ukraine, there was a precursor to that, which, that sort of started in 2014, I think, with the annexation of Crimea.
Yeah.
So there's been a long history to it. The stuff you see now hasn't just popped out of nowhere. And so, people living both in Ukraine and in Russia were cut off from their banking services. I mean, ironically, the first payment we received in Bitcoin was from Ukrainians, not from Russians. So they obviously were banking in Russia despite being Ukrainian, which is the case for a lot of people there. And yeah, it's just I'm just so grateful that we had a way to circumvent that.
That's great to hear. And so I think in your article, you mentioned you started accepting Bitcoin in 2015. So it's been some time, right? It's not
Yeah.
like you just came to Bitcoin yesterday. You've been around and you saw an opportunity to use Bitcoin where you had been shut out of the fiat financial system. And so I'm curious as well, like even back in those 2015 days, were you experiencing resistance from customers where they're saying, "Oh, I don't want to go and get Bitcoin. Why can't I just pay you with cash or fiat?"
Um, yeah, I mean, I think there was less resistance then than what I'm experiencing now because people probably didn't know about it. I mean, hardly anyone knew about it. We had to sort of educate people when they reached out and they wanted to pay, and we said, look, we can't take fiat payments, and we had to sort of direct them towards resources where they could go and learn. I think today there's a lot more sort of knee jerk resistance towards Bitcoin. I think a lot of people have come to hear about it and they don't like it for other reasons, like they don't trust themselves, or they don't trust, they want to trust the government, and for that reason they don't like Bitcoin. I think a lot more people are resisting it today. Back then it was sort of like kind of cool because no one knew about it in a way.
That's fascinating to hear because you would think after 7 years we've gotten better at teaching people what Bitcoin is, but it in a way there's maybe some emotional or psychological barriers that were even more difficult to surpass than just the initial hurdle of just knowing what Bitcoin is and how to use it.
Yeah, I mean the people that we received our first payments from were very quick to sort of become enthusiastic about it. It just solved a practical problem, and they had a practical problem. They wanted to come on holiday, and they wanted to come on holiday with us because they liked the stuff that we were doing and putting together. And they couldn't pay us because their banks had shut them out, and Bitcoin solved that problem. And it was just a practical circumvention of that. I think today, like you say, a lot of people have, emotional issues with it and are actually rejecting the wrong thing. They're not rejecting Bitcoin itself.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but hopefully people do learn. So tell us a little bit about what you are doing. As I understand, you have tourism and surf as well. So what exactly are you selling on that side? And then we'll get into the Bitcoin Ekasi project as well.
Yeah, I mean, like on that side, we're basically just a regular tour operator. I mean, we put trips together for people that want to come to South Africa. They want to come on a surfing holiday. They don't want to bother with organizing the thing themselves, which can be quite a hassle if you're going to a new country for the first time. If you just want to sit back and relax, you want to make sure you surf the best waves. You don't want to drag your own equipment along. You don't want to worry about driving or booking the right places to stay. And we put the holiday together for people. And we organize 7-day, 10-day, 14-day trips, whatever the group wants specifically. And it's nothing special about it. It's just basically surfing holidays.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's get into the Bitcoin project aspect of it. Now, I know you were inspired by Bitcoin Beach. So can you tell us a little bit about how your what was your experience there getting inspired by Bitcoin Beach and then going on to start your own project?
Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've been pretty much obsessed with Bitcoin, since first getting into it because it's just this incredible thing. Um, I'm not super tech tech minded. I mean, I try my best to keep up with the technical side of things, and I try to educate myself as far as possible. But I've always wanted to contribute in some way. Um, and when I heard about Bitcoin Beach, I thought to myself, well, this is a way in which I can contribute. I've been running this little organization, as a sort of a side operation to our business. It's a little non-profit organization, and we work with kids from a really poor community, try and teach them a constructive skill. And we use surfing, and it's better than them running around causing shit. And getting into gangs and drugs and all that crap. So we bring them down to the beach, and I figured that I could contribute to the Bitcoin ecosystem by, demonstrating that Bitcoin can be used as a form of daily money. And because, I mean, at the end of the day, that's what will have to happen. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is ready for that today, but eventually, if we want Bitcoin to become this, this global asset that people use on a daily basis, then, someone has to start somewhere. And I think Bitcoin Beach did that, and they demonstrated that it's possible. And obviously it's not perfect, but you got to start somewhere. And that's basically what we're trying to emulate, trying to showcase that it's possible in another location, not just in one.
So can you set the context as well for us in the town you're in? What's it like there? Unemployment, illiteracy, housing, running water situation. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it's a typical South African township. South Africa has this fucked up history. Sorry, I hope you don't mind
That's all right.
swear words on your show. But it really is a pretty horrible situation of racial segregation, that this country has. And the townships are a sort of a hangover from that period, where people congregate in large communities, sort of slums outside the big cities. And it's a sort of a situation you have in many other countries around the world. But education is a big problem. Illiteracy is a massive problem. A lot of people live without running water. Houses are constructed from like scrap material, what people pick up off the side of the road. You'll have, some of the kids that we recruit, they live in, there's like 7, 10 people living in a 1 bedroom structure. So there's no sort of privacy. There's a big issue of fatherlessness because the parents tend to go away and find work somewhere else and then start another family and never come back. So all the social issues that you would associate with poverty, you find in these sorts of places. Very difficult circumstances to grow up in.
Yeah, that's a hard situation. And so, as I understand, then the idea is you're trying to, in a way, with this project, you're helping show people that even under these conditions, Bitcoin still makes sense for people. And in some cases, it's the only alternative, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I thought to myself when I came across Bitcoin Beach, and I heard what they did, I thought to myself, well, that's great because it shows that Bitcoin really starts at a ground level. And I figured, well, if we can demonstrate that Bitcoin works here, then, there's no practical reason why it can't work anywhere else. I mean, I know a lot of people are going to say that they prefer not to use it, and that's fine. When no one's going to force this on anyone else, but there's no practical reason why someone can't use it if it works here. Like, if people generally have the excuse that it's too complicated or it's too volatile or, blah, 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 whatever. And like, well, if the people that we work with, if they can use it, then I think those excuses become a lot more difficult to justify, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure. And so, in terms of ability to use Bitcoin, basically, I've seen some of the videos you've been posting and stuff. So I presume most people have a phone and they're able to, a smartphone.
Most adults, yeah, most adults have smartphones. It's very rare that we come across someone who don't have a smartphone. I mean, the phones are very low end devices. You hardly ever see iPhones. Most of it is sort of like cheap Android devices, but you can pick one of those up for really cheap. I mean, and it's generally the problem is, does the phone have enough memory to load a new application? So, if you have a Bitcoin wallet that takes up a little bit more memory, then you might have to start deleting other apps. That's actually the biggest problem that we have.
Yeah, and you know what? That's something I've noticed even when I talk to Sri Lankans as well. That can have it can be a similar situation where they've got a cheap Android and they need to uninstall some other applications before they can install Bitcoin apps or wallets there as well. So can you tell us a little bit about what that process has been like, onboarding people into Bitcoin under these conditions?
Um, I mean, I guess the one thing that we've done, it wasn't really planned. Like, a lot of the stuff we just kind of started talking to people and see how it goes. And I think the one thing that we found is just like, demonstrating the practical use cases. Like, I don't shill any particular products or services, but I've got to say that Bitrefill has been, for us, been one of the most magical orange pilling apps that we could have found, because, it's sort of like, it's kind of funny. Like, I was just in Ghana recently for a conference there, and the same thing happened when I was talking to people there about Bitcoin too. Like, we met some fishermen on the beach, and it's a very similar situation. You'll give them a couple of sats into a wallet, and they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, this is kind of cool." And then, but the moment you show them how to convert those sats into credits for the phone, it's like, the light goes on, and there's the spark in their eyes, because then they realize, holy shit, they've just bought, phone credits using digital tokens from their own phone. And that's kind of when it goes off, like, this is real money. Like, the moment you can demonstrate it's real money, that's when the light bulb goes off. And generally, using something like Bitrefill is the best way to do that, because it's instant. A value that they're used to is instantly delivered to their phone, and that value is phone credit. And it's a very valuable thing in sort of poorer communities. Phone credits is a highly sought after commodity there. So yeah, that works really well. I think that's been one of the main ways we've approached people. But to be honest, that work wasn't done by me. That work was done by the coaches who work for the organization. Um, because generally I'm from a much more privileged situation. I have an education. I've got a sort of a background in business and so on. And, I've tried my best to have the coaches from the community itself be the ones that go out and do the onboarding, so that it's not seen as like this external effort. Um, yeah, I mean, you would have seen this in some of the places you've traveled to as well, where it's hard for an outsider to come in, and sort of start helping people. It's better for a person from the community.
Yeah. So then I guess in a way it's about that initial onboarding that you might have had to do with some of the coaches, and then eventually they are skilled up enough now to go out and actually do the teaching themselves.
Yeah.
I've seen you've got a bunch of videos where you have basically kids who are going around town and they've got their Bitcoin wallet and they're buying groceries at the shop with Lightning. So tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, well, I mean, so we've got this group of kids, that have, been coming to our after school program. They attend 5 days a week, and we try and encourage them to come down and, and learn something useful. And so, I mean, we've started giving the kids who show like a regular attendance, we started giving them small rewards in Bitcoin. And this was actually something that was suggested by Michael Peterson from Bitcoin Beach. I was a little bit reluctant to do that, but I trusted his sort of guidance on this, and it's worked out really well. And the way we approach that is kind of like, I mean, we've never given the kids money, for as long as we've been running this organization. It's been more than 10 years now. We started the underlying nonprofit in 2010. And I've learned my lesson the hard way in what is a good way to try and uplift poor communities, and generally handing out free stuff is not a good way to do that. Like you don't hand out food, you don't hand out clothes, you don't like teaching someone a skill. That's a good way to learn. That's a good way to help poor communities, teaching skills. But handing out free stuff, it generally creates a toxic relationship. And so I was very reluctant to do that. But Mike explained to me that it's a very valuable thing to have, because generally the children will attract more curiosity from people. And so where adults might be reluctant to engage with another adult when they encounter this new technology, they'd be more willing to engage with a child and ask them, hey, what are you doing? Like, what's this, And they'd be more open to receive new information when they're talking to a child rather than being orange pilled by an adult. And so it's been quite effective. We've had people approach the kids asking like, hey, what the hell are you doing here? What's going on? What's this? And then that sort of like sets the stage for one of the coaches who's an adult to come in and say, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. So, we're giving these kids these rewards and they have to earn it. I mean, we don't just hand it out randomly. We'll give kids the rewards if they've really shown sort of a level of commitment to the program and learning something useful. So, I mean, these kids show up 5 days a week after school. And that's generally, not easy for a child to do. If they're just fucking around, then they'll probably go and do something else. So that's pretty much the backstory. And it works.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so what's it been like trying to get some shops onboarded in the town so that there's actually some circular economy growing there?
I mean, getting the shops on board is obviously the most difficult part of the whole thing. Like it's generally quite easy to tell someone, listen here, we're going to be paying your salary in Bitcoin. I mean, because they get paid on a weekly basis, so the sort of the volatility wouldn't affect them too badly, and the amount of their salary is tied to fiat, so it's adjusted for volatility on a weekly basis. But getting the shops on board, that's quite tricky, because they're the ones that are sort of like, how can I put it, left with the hot potatoes at the end of the day, So it's been tough, and to be honest, I think I've seen it adopted in ways that have surprised me. Like we've got 10 shops that are accepting Bitcoin, and surprisingly enough, 3 out of 10 is holding on despite the volatility. They've seen this as an opportunity. The shop that we onboarded the first in August last year, so it's been just over a year. She's holding on to a significant amount of Bitcoin, and she's seen the price go from around $40,000 all the way up to 60 something, and now I've seen it come back down to below 20. So, I mean, it's interesting to see people adopt it in that way, and it's been entirely. I mean, we've been really careful not to push this onto people that don't want it, because one of the first things that we will be accused of is being irresponsible, pushing a volatile asset into a poor community. So we've been really, really careful to keep it like as voluntary as possible, and which is part of the reason why we haven't expanded to more shops. We try and keep it small, because if something goes wrong, I guess at least the damage can be contained if we stay small.
Yeah, and I think it's also fair to say that you want those shops to have a chance of actually earning revenue, and if there's not enough people spending Bitcoin around at the shops, then it's not really as sustainable. So if you've only got a few shops and everyone with Bitcoin is going to those shops, then there's a bit more of a they're going to get a bit more Bitcoin revenue coming in. But I'm curious how some of those shops are dealing with it, because as an example, if they have to then go pay their suppliers or staff or rent, how are they dealing with that? Or is it just more like they're treating it like, I'm going to keep some of the profits in Bitcoin? That's basically what they're doing, right?
Yeah, the shops that are holding on, that are not cashing out, they'll for them it's sort of like a long-term investment. So the money that they do have in Bitcoin is something that they don't need to cash out anytime soon. Um, but that's only 3 out of 10. The other 7 shops are all cashing out, and I guess for them, from what I've seen, it's more like a interesting sort of experience. It's something new that they've, I mean, because I just spoke to one of our coaches again yesterday, and they generally, the shops don't have bank accounts, and we were dealing with a shop now again recently where the owner of the shop doesn't have a bank account, and we've been trying to find ways. Okay, so how can we help him cash out? Eventually, we got to a point where I was like, okay, so his girlfriend, she's got the necessary papers, and so we can open a Paxful account using his girlfriend's papers, but the shop owner himself. So it's kind of like, it's finding creative ways in which they can cash out to local fiat. And I know that that's not exactly the idea, because then the Bitcoin is not circular, but it's one small step at a time. We're not gonna close the loop overnight. And so far 70% of the shops are cashing out, but we have seen a small percentage of shop owners actually going and then using their Bitcoin. So taking those sats one step further. So we'll have 1 or 2 of the shop owners, for example, that's going to cut their hair at another shop that also accepts Bitcoin. And now there's a Bitcoin transaction happening between 2 businesses. So each time that thing happens, we get closer to closing the loop. And so I think for them, for the most part, it's just an interesting experience in being able to make digital transactions, which they generally haven't been able to do, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And of course, they can use the likes of Bitrefill, right? Like, so they could be using Bitrefill to get phone credit, and that's one of their ways to quote unquote cash out, but actually they're spending Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
that's interesting to see as well. I'm curious then, in terms of your customers on the surf tourism side, any of them Bitcoiners and spending Bitcoin at the shops?
Well, I mean, I guess it's an interesting question. I mean, especially now, more recently, like now with what's happening in Russia in the last sort of, half a year or so. It's been a little bit more than half a year now. I mean, the last couple of tours we've had, 100% of payments have come in Bitcoin, because now really there is no other way. Our market is still primarily Eastern Europe, and Russia. And it's interesting, like, I mean, I guess in a nutshell, we've never really been pushing tourists. We've never really wanted to take tourists into these poorer areas. I mean, a lot of tour operators do that, but I don't like this sort of like drive through the township type tourism. And we've always used the nonprofit to give people a taste of South Africa, because we'll have tourists and kids surf together, but then it's like a constructive environment and it's a level playing field, But now, since we started the Bitcoin project, some of these tourists have been curious, like, hey, what's going on up there? I see the coaches walking around with like Bitcoin t-shirts and stuff. And so we've taken people up there, and it's surprising how many people are like interested in crypto and stuff, but they have no idea about the Lightning Network, for example. Right. And so it's actually been interesting to see that this is sort of like becoming an educational project for people outside of the project as well, because now you've got this little project in this little unexpected environment that's using Bitcoin, and everybody knows Bitcoin and crypto, but then people come in and they sort of like get a better understanding of maybe what this is all about. So yeah, we've had people interested in what's going on here, and it's fascinating to see that new connection between tourists and people on the ground in South Africa.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point about the so-called crypto people as well. Like, oftentimes I'll be, if I'm out at a meetup or I'm chatting with people, there are times when I'm chatting to a quote-unquote crypto person, and then the impression that they have of Bitcoin's Lightning Network is that, oh, Lightning, I thought that thing was like stagnant and not working and whatever. And then it's like, no, I'll actually demonstrate. Seeing is believing, right? So if you can show them, oh, hey, you can buy this thing on Bitrefill, or you can buy products, real world things with it. but I think you're right that a lot of people, even the ones who we would think might know, people who are broad, in the broader quote unquote crypto world. Again, crypto is in quotes, right? Crypto means cryptography
Yeah.
as far as I'm concerned. But even people from that world, you'd think they would know about Lightning, or like have done a Lightning transaction, but actually many of them have not. And so I think it's really fascinating to see. So it's one of those things where we have to get really good as a community at marketing and showing people, hey, this Lightning, it works, it's real, it's here. Here's some videos of me doing it. Here's a picture. Here's some people. Here's an island who do it. Here's a town who do it. All of these things. We can't see enough of them.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think on that point, when I was in El Salvador and I was hanging out with Michael Peterson, he was telling me how CZ from Binance came to visit El Zonte,
Oh, nice.
and he'd never made a Lightning transaction before, and it's kind of like, I mean, as far look, I don't like I said, I'm not super technical, but I've done as much work as I can, and as far as I can tell, like I think Lightning is by far the most exciting thing happening in the entire crypto space. Like there's nothing more exciting than that, because I think this is how we onboard billions of people, which is what we'll have to do if we want this thing to go anywhere. Like if we've got a couple of 100,000 people, playing around with this technology, it's not really going to accomplish what we hope it can. So Lightning is a super exciting development, and then a lot of people like actually haven't seen it work in real life, and I think that's a very valuable thing that should be demonstrated. Like I mean, the coaches who earn their salaries, I mean, they're using Lightning like a normal person would use a bank card on a daily basis. They're literally buying their groceries every single day on the Lightning Network. And I know it's a lot of it's custodial and so on, but it's early days. These things are going to develop, and I mean, the development we have seen in the last 3-4 years have been incredible. So just imagine where we will be another 3-4 years from now.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair as well. I think it's it's the right tool for the job, right? So if I'm talking to somebody in the Western world, I'll basically 100% of the time point them to a non-custodial app. But I can understand totally for somebody who's coming from a lower socioeconomic standing position. I think from that point of view, look, it's hard. It's going to be hard to tell that person that they must use non-custodial apps. So I think it's as so long as that's seen as like the smaller spending money amount, and once they stack enough that it's worthwhile. Okay, now it's time to go non-custodial. Okay, now maybe you even think about a hardware device, right? Like, and there are low
Mm.
cost hardware devices, like as an example, there are these, like Tap Signer as an example. There are others out there that are low cost devices, even Seed Signer, Blockstream Jade. These are some examples out there that are like low cost devices. So I'm curious, has that been something you've had that conversation then with any of the coaches or anyone, or they're not at that level yet?
Yeah, we've got sorry, excuse me. We've got all our coaches onto hardware wallets for what they're saving long term. We've also got the shops onto hardware wallets if they are holding for the long term. Like I said, most of them are actually cashing out, but the 3 shops that are holding on long term, they've all got hardware wallets. So we're trying to do this in the most sort of responsible way possible. I mean, it's really opened my eyes as well to see, like, on the ground, one sometimes have to be like, you've got to be aware of the realities of life. Like we had one coach who backed up his seed phrase, and fortunately this was in the very early days, so he had very little Bitcoin saved. But I mean, we went through the the backing up process again and again, writing on 12 words. We actually had them stamp it into metal. And then he did eventually lose his wallet, came back with his backup, and it was missing some of the words. And he just hadn't written down all 12 words properly. And obviously you can't have someone watching, looking over his shoulder when he's doing the backup process, because that's part of the whole idea, is that, you do your own backup. Like, if I'm doing the backup for him, what's the point? I might as well keep it in the wallet that I control. So, like, these are the realities of life on the
Yeah.
ground if you're dealing with communities like this, and one has to take that into account. It's easy to say, like, non-custodial, but at the end of the day, like, the reality is that these things happen slowly, And if you're going to do it in a responsible way, it means that sometimes the more responsible option is actually a custodial wallet before you get into the nitty gritty. But we are definitely pushing in that direction of, being self-sovereign and control of your own keys, as far as possible.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair position to have. I see it like many of us will make mistakes. I mean, I made mistakes when I was new to Bitcoin, and I'm sure you have. I'm sure probably most listeners have made a mistake at some point in their Bitcoin career, maybe lost some sats or done something stupid, sent something to the wrong address. We've all made these kinds of mistakes, and really that's what makes us learn. So, it's difficult to walk through life and think, oh, with enough preparation, I can avoid every little error. Like that's just not realistic for you or for me or for many people.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. Like this, I mean, self custody is not a all in effort, all in one go, all at the same time, right at the beginning. I think it's a learning process, and I'm still learning. It's been however many years, and I'm still trying to figure out how to run a Lightning node. Um, and it's tricky, it's tricky. I'm using Lightning in a custodial way, despite having been in Bitcoin for a while, and I consider myself relatively okay in the technicalities, but it's a learning process. It's been one hell of a learning process for me running this project too. Like I've seen people adopt Bitcoin in ways that I've never expected. So yeah, I think as long as you recognize, that it's a learning process, one step at a time.
Yeah, sure. I'm curious from your perspective, what's been the issue for you, like with using, as an example, the likes of Phoenix or Breeze or like Moon Wallet or any of those kinds of wallets? What's been for you the main hold up, like compared to using a custodial?
Um, Phoenix was actually one of the first wallets that we looked at. When we started off. I mean, we've never had a developer on the team, so we've had to build this project using apps that you can download of the App Store.
Yeah, sure.
So Phoenix was one of the first ones we looked at. When Moon came out, that was also like pretty awesome. I love the simplicity, especially the interchangeability between on chain and Lightning. But at the end of the day, the one thing that the wallets we use have to have is a static LNURL address,
I see.
because that's the most practical way of paying salaries. Like if you're gonna be paying salaries on a weekly basis, like every Monday, I've got to sit down and pay the salaries for 9 people, and I've got to do all of that over Lightning. Then it's unrealistic to expect those guys to all send me a Lightning invoice for the salary amount all at the same time when I have a 30-minute gap to sit down and do the
Gotcha.
salaries.
So it's the
So
invoice timeout and the expiry window that's making it
yeah,
difficult for you there. Gotcha. Yeah,
yeah,
interesting. And I mean, I think this is actually just feedback for probably developers and people and builders listening. They might be thinking about ways around that. So as an example, there's Lightning addresses, and I mean, there's all kinds of ways around that. But yeah, some of them are custodial. But hopefully, this is seen as like a stepping stone, and eventually it gets to a state where they are able to do it like where everyone can do it non-custodial, or at least more people can. But I mean, certainly, I
yeah.
think you're on that track. So, one other interesting point I wanted to bring up. I know you were tweeting about this from your visit in. It says you were in Ghana, and there was a village chief expressing like skepticism about Bitcoin. So, can you tell us a little bit about that? What happened there?
Well, it turns out it was actually a chief from a neighboring village. Um, so one of the issues was that there was also a bit of jealousy involved. But I mean, basically, so at the conference in Ghana, I went with a delegation of speakers. So some of the people that were speaking at the event, and we visited a new education center that was opened by Built with Bitcoin and Paxful. Um, I mean, both of those organizations have been, I mean, especially like, Paxful, who's backing the whole operation. I mean, in terms of like education, I think they're just heading in the right direction. They're heavily focused on educating people. Um, and so they were opening this new education center, and this guy showed up, and he walked in with a whole entourage of people, and he seemed to be the most important person there. And I incorrectly assumed he was the chief from that village, but it turns out he was a chief from another village. But that's sort of besides the point, because the point still was, and the point that I was trying to make with that tweet was that, there's this perception that Bitcoin might be a scam because of all the scams associated with the quote unquote crypto space. And there's a hell of a lot of stuff in the crypto space that's selling itself as something that it's not, and it just really kind of frustrates me. you know, I've adopted a stance of being a Bitcoin maximalist purely for practical purposes. Like, I don't even want to bother looking at any of the other stuff because 99.9 times out of 100, it's going to be a scam. And that's just based on the experience of the last however many years. I was actually very curious and excited when Ethereum launched back in the day. And I was like, oh, this is cool. This could be interesting. Like, let's see what's going to happen here. And like over time with the whole ICO craze and stuff like that, like how many of those projects are just like gone? Like they launched with this whole big fanfare and whatever, and they're just gone. So, this chief was skeptical. I think actually he actually might have lost some money on FTX, which is also why he was sour, and so he actually said in his speech that, we should be careful. We, meaning the village people, should be careful of this Bitcoin education thing because Bitcoin might be a scam. And I can understand why he says that, but obviously once you've, educated yourself on Bitcoin, it becomes pretty clear that there's no way it can be a scam. Like, it's just a protocol. Like, how is that a scam?
Yeah.
It's used by scammers, and particularly scammers who create things that look and smell and feel like Bitcoin, but is in fact something completely different. And so it's kind of like sad to see that there's all these projects like riding on Bitcoin's success. And yeah, so I think some people might have misunderstood that tweet, but like from a purely practical perspective, I think Bitcoin maximalism just makes sense for people in my position, because like if you're working in a community like ours where you're already struggling with basic education, like, a lot of people struggle to read and write. Where are you going to begin explaining the difference between the 20,000 different shitcoins out there? Like, it's a hopeless task. Like, so, it's just the easiest, best, most practical, safest way is just ignore all of them. Bitcoin, and that's it. It just makes more sense, man.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
and
don't
as you
know.
were saying, there's all these crypto clowns who are basically scamming and riding the reputation of riding the reputation of Bitcoin or riding Bitcoin's coattails, right? And then they're, in a way, it's
Yeah.
tarnishing Bitcoin because crypto, quote unquote, crypto fails, and then they blame Bitcoin and say, oh, we need more regulation. Oh, I see. Look, all you quote unquote toxic maxi people, etc. You haven't helped anyone. Well, the people who stuck with Bitcoin, they're able to still, and the people who particularly listen to the advice about not your keys, not your coins, they didn't get scammed, right? They've got their coins. Yes, the paper value, the price of Bitcoin is down from the all time high, but that's always going to be true over certain periods of time. So I think that's that's kind of where that lies. But I'm also curious to get your view, like while we're talking about that, the volatility, because that seems to be the big thing, right? There are people talking about, oh, do we need stable coins? Do we need some kind of stable coin on Lightning? Things like this. I'm curious if you have any reactions to that being where you are.
Yeah, I mean, look, the volatility, obviously, that's one of the first things people often ask me about. And I think if you're cashing in and out of Bitcoin on a regular basis, then I don't think the volatility is an issue, obviously. Um, and because, I mean, if you're being paid your salary on a weekly basis and the amount is tied to a fiat value, then if there's some volatility to the downside, then next week, it'll bring
It'll
you back
balance
up to the
out.
level what.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of over a week to week basis. There's volatility to the upside and the downside. So the coaches have never really had an issue because they earn on a weekly basis, and the shops are also cashing out on a regular basis. Where volatility is an issue is sort of like over a month to month basis. But then we've been very clear with the shops. Look, if you think you're going to need this money, cash out immediately. If you don't cash out, make sure that this is something you're going to hold for several years. And I think by taking that stance, you can kind of like mitigate most of the volatility risk. Because look, I think if you look 4 years into the future, probably Bitcoin is going to be worth multiple times more than it is now. So don't worry about the price if it's 4 years from now. And if you are even slightly worried about the price, cash out tomorrow. Like don't even think about holding it for another month. And I think that's how we approach that. But just to get back to your previous point, I want to ask you something, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Like, so and this is one of the things with this whole Bitcoin maximalism and the crypto space thing. Like, actually, to a large extent, this project sort of turned me into a Bitcoin maximalist. Before this, I was kind of like this project and the 2017 ICO craze, and I think this is something that a lot of crypto people don't realize. Is like, I speaking for myself, I didn't come into this space as a Bitcoin maximalist. I encountered Bitcoin, and then I encountered Ethereum, and then I encountered one after the other, and slowly but surely, all the crypto scams out there turned me into a Bitcoin maximalist. And I think that's a similar journey for a lot of people. But I'm curious to know how you got to that, because I know you're a Bitcoin maxi too. I'm curious to know what turned you into one.
So my story is probably a little atypical. I basically got into Bitcoin, was interested in sound money, and just never really got into altcoins, right? So I started. So I mean, I've mentioned a few times, but basically, I really got fascinated by Bitcoin in December 2012. Bought some of my first coin in early 2013, and was obsessed with Bitcoin ever since. And so back in those days, people who were writing content, and back in those days, who were the influencers back then? Andreas Antonopoulos, Tua Demista, Trace Mayer, my friends Michael Goldstein, Pierre Richard, um, people like that. Conrad Graf was around in those days. And so for me, I just kind of came to Bitcoin from that view, and I was already a libertarian, right? I was already anti-central banking, already anti-fiat money, you know. So for me, it was just like Bitcoin is the most important thing, and I just never really got that interested in other coins and tokens and so on. And I saw it like, look, if you want to do equity, issue actual equity. If you want to do debt, do debt. But Bitcoin is meant to be the money, and that's that, right? And so to me, it just, yeah, I guess I just kind of came to it, and that was what I was most interested in. Maybe we could say that. Now, to the point where, let's say, quote unquote, the Bitcoin maximalists are criticizing all the crypto projects, I think it's often out of uh, wanting there to be truthful reflection of what that thing is, whether it's like false marketing about, this idea that some altcoin can do more transactions per second than Bitcoin. And of course, now we have Lightning, so that's basically totally gone. Or things like, people now, over the last few years, people would say things like, oh, but we need some kind of more expressive smart contracting and this and that. And at the end of the day, I think what matters is having a robust, scalable, decentralized, verifiable, open, permissionless, all of these aspects, and scarce, and you need it to be all of these things. And just beating, like, even if you can beat Bitcoin in one of those areas, you're probably not beating Bitcoin across all of them or across multiple of
Yeah,
those areas. And that's really what it is. And it's about accessibility also, right? So even for people, the everyday person, to be able to run their own Bitcoin node, that's something that Bitcoin people have been we've all been very much focused on, that idea that it should be accessible to the everyday person, like, that they can run a Bitcoin node. And that's why you see all this whole Raspberry Pi thing. Although nowadays I would pretty much tell people, look, if you can afford to just buy an old laptop or use an old laptop or an old computer, that's probably going to be better. But the point is, you can do it. So
yeah,
yeah, so I'd say those are probably the key reasons for me. But I know my journey and my story is not exactly typical. But
yeah,
I think it also is a journey of learning, right? As you learn more about the technical aspect and the economic aspect, you sort of start to get to that point. And I think if you think about name, brand, and recognition, right? If you search, like, even if you look at Google search trends, you'll see Bitcoin is just so far ahead, because if somebody knows the term cryptocurrency, they generally they know the word Bitcoin. They don't necessarily know a lot
yeah,
of the other ones, and there's something to
yeah.
that. This network is
Yeah.
hard to beat, and the grassroots is hard to beat. There's, you don't really see like Ethereum Town or like, you
No,
know what
you
I mean?
don't.
There's
I
no,
think there's a reason
you
for
know,
that.
there's Bitcoin Beach. I don't see Ethereum Beach. Or there's no, and Ethereum is number two on the on the shitcoin list or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you go even further down, there's how many other 20,000 other coins. So that's kind of how I'm
Yeah.
seeing
I
it.
mean, to be honest, I think there's no Ethereum beach because I don't think they really care about anything else. There's no like wider reference for them. It's this crypto bubble and that's it. And whatever you can do in the crypto space, that's what they care about. But there's a Bitcoin beach because Bitcoiners care about practicality. Like this thing has to have a real use case in the real world. And it's interesting that you mentioned that because I connected pretty well with the rest of the Bitcoin communities, especially the ones that have made a bit of progress, like Bitcoin Jungle, Bitcoin Lake, Bitcoin Beach Brazil. There's a couple of others too. And the interesting thing is that none of them had much contact with each other before starting off. But the one thing they all do have in common is like they don't tolerate shitcoins. It's Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. And it's an interesting correlation between them. And I think maybe eventually we will see an Ethereum beach, but so far that hasn't happened. And I think there's a very good reason for that. Maybe I can't put it into words so well, but I think the observation that Bitcoiners have given birth to this like community effort is kind of telling, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's like we want to make money that's usable by everyone. um, and I think that's quite important. But yeah, I mean, I think your story with how you came to be a Bitcoin maxi is maybe a little bit atypical, but I mean, speaking for myself, a lot of the Bitcoin maxis I've met are not actually very toxic people. Like, we're nice people. It's just that we get toxic towards people who portray themselves as doing something that they're not really doing. And I think that's where a lot of the shitcoin projects really start to piss me off. When they talk about things and I'm like, wait, hang on, what's really going on here? Um, yeah.
Yeah, well, there you go. And so then, while we're on the whole topic of education, I'm curious: have you had the chance, or even with the coaches, what kind of stuff have you used to teach them? Has it been like, do they listen to any podcasts, or do you give them a book, or like they read an article here and there, or is it just all kind of, whatever you teach them in person and show them in person?
So we've had some books donated, and we've employed a full-time teacher. This is also largely thanks to Paxful and Built with Bitcoin. It's an education center that we opened recently. Um, Education is super important. I mean, a lot of people say this, but as far as I'm concerned, education is like the bedrock for freedom. Because freedom is all about making your own choices, making voluntary choices. And I very, very strongly believe in that. Like, I believe people should make their own choices. I don't think there's any future where we have a sustainable situation of government telling people how to live their lives. I think the moment you introduce government, you inevitably always end up with authoritarianism. That's just human nature. So, and if you're gonna have freedom and voluntary choices, like a choice is only voluntary if it's well informed, right? Like, if you don't know what you're talking about, how are you going to be able to make any choice whatsoever? So, education is one of the first things we focused on. And in terms of resources, there are some sort of like, I don't know if it's too early to call them canonical, but there are some texts that I consider really important. So we've got the Bitcoin Standard donated, that's sitting in the library. We've got a couple of other ones, including 21 lessons. And I think Bitcoin Magazine has been a really good source of information for myself. So I'm constantly sending articles to the coaches on Bitcoin Magazine. I mean, as far as the coaches go, like their literacy skills are relatively good, but the wider community, sometimes we struggle with that. So we've actually produced a little 10-minute documentary in the local language, which is Xhosa. And that was done with the help of Bitrefill. So we did the footage. Bitrefill paid for the sort of editing and stuff, and then another local project in South Africa did the translation from English to Xhosa, and that's something that we take to people and we show them. And with it being audio visual, it's really engaging. Like it's sometimes in areas where literacy levels are quite low, it's really difficult to spread education with written material. Like even like a little pamphlet becomes pretty much useless if you have people who struggle to read and write. So that audio visual thing. So a lot of YouTube videos, like there's a lot of really useful things out there in terms of that. Yeah, man, there's a lot of content. I think the biggest problem actually is not the lack of content. The biggest problem is filtering out the noise and focusing on the stuff that's valuable. And I think for that reason, like if you're going to do something like this, with Mike Peterson in El Salvador or the other projects, they all have like someone who's got some experience in Bitcoin, leading it, because like it's really difficult filtering out the noise. I think that's the big challenge.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation because, you're right that now there's a plethora of Bitcoin content out there. There's a range of stuff, even 21 lessons. That's actually available for free now at swan.com/21lessons. People can get that, the electronic version, for free. It's all out there and it requires a lot of curation. I'm curious as well, in terms of any other learnings that came from your discussion with the other communities. Like, what were there any other big similarities or differences that you noticed?
I think some of the similarities is that, I mean, there's at least two other projects that focus a lot on sort of like underdeveloped communities in terms of socioeconomic development. So, and then there's communities like Bitcoin Jungle that focus on the expat community. And I think those are two of the important use cases for these types of circular economies so far that I've seen. So it's interesting to see these two different use cases developed, where on the one hand, you can use Bitcoin to uplift people who are coming from a previously disadvantaged situation because they don't have access to banking and finance. And on the other hand, you can use Bitcoin to help expat communities, be in a situation where they are not as hampered by, regulations against moving money across borders. Because let's face it, the banking system in most developed countries work pretty well until you have to cross a border. Like when you cross a border, it doesn't matter how well developed the banking system in your home country is, the situation becomes horrible once you have to start moving across borders. So those are the two interesting use cases I've seen developed amongst the circular economies. I know the big ones in Bitcoin Island, for example, they've got an integration with Strike, and that's made remittances really easy. And now Strike is also integrated with Bitnob, which serves West Africa. And again, that's making remittances really easy because, it's like Jack Mallers says, like Bitcoin can basically be a central bank for the world, where you can have the settlement system where two companies in two completely different jurisdictions, as long as they both speak the language of Bitcoin and Lightning, there's no reason why they can't interoperate. So yeah, that's a really interesting use case. Obviously, our situation is more aligned with Bitcoin Beach Brazil, where we're using Bitcoin to try and uplift a previously heavily disadvantaged community where people don't have access to basic finance or even bank accounts. So I think it's a really valuable thing. I think people underestimate the power that you can give to a person by giving them access to digital money if they've never been banked before. Like this whole thing of banking the unbanked, there's been a lot of criticism. Like I specifically remember there's one panel at Bitcoin Amsterdam where I think the lady's called Jemima
This is an
something
infamous
something.
panel. Yeah, so this is the journalism one. There
Yeah,
was Joe Hall from Cointelegraph, Pete Rizzo from Bitcoin
yeah,
Magazine. What's that other lady's name? She used to be at FT, Isabella Kaminska, and then Jemima, who is
yes,
currently still at FT. Uh, yeah.
yeah. And I was sitting there listening to that, and I thought to myself, because one of the criticisms that Jemima came up with is like she's pushing back in her own. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but in her own words, she said she's pushing back against this narrative that Bitcoin is, banking the unbanked because she says that that's a disingenuous lie that Bitcoiners use to push Bitcoin. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, just in my little small project that I'm running, Like I don't have, we don't have any massive influence or anything. It's a small little project, but in this little small project, I've seen numerous instances where a person has greatly benefited from having digital payments. We just as one example, we had a coach who can't get a bank account. He's got problems with his papers, right? His birth certificate has a fucking spelling mistake on it. So they won't give him a bank account, right? He was having his money stolen by family members who are older and wiser than him. This guy's he's still a teenager. He's only been working for a couple of years. We don't pay him a big salary. He earns a little bit, but that money is really valuable for him. And he was having his money manipulated out of him because there's only so many places where you can hide cash if you share a 1-bedroom house with 7 other people. So eventually they're going to find that cash and they're going to take it and they're going to use it to buy cigarettes and alcohol and whatever. And when we started paying him in Bitcoin, man, all of a sudden, his money was his. Like no one could take it because it was stored on a phone that was protected by a password. And like they couldn't manipulate the password out of him. And that changed the family dynamics. And all of a sudden, this young man was now in a position where he was responsible for deciding what's going to happen with the money that he earned. And that's a far more healthy situation, just in a social sense. And so I'm sitting there listening to this lady on this panel saying that, and I'm thinking like someone has to push back against that narrative, because banking the unbanked really is quite powerful. And, you're not going to hear these stories because it's happening in situations where not many people are paying attention to. And maybe it's still isolated incidents. But I think it's I actually do think that narrative, banking the unbanked, is a very powerful one. And it makes a massive impact on people's lives.
Well, yeah, I think that's a great example you've left there. And I think you've also made the point about getting the lifeboat ready before the ship goes down. So what are you getting at here? Why should we get the lifeboat ready before the ship goes down?
I mean, look, the ship is sinking, right? And I think in a South African context, there's a massive number of people who live with difficult circumstances. Like you've got massive inequality in South Africa, and unfortunately the government here has made things worse because they've made promises that they can't keep. And just this morning, I was, just again reading a little bit on South Africa's debt, and our previous president was making all kinds of new social grants, and he was doing this with borrowed money, right? Because that's what politicians like to do. They buy votes, and they buy votes generally from uneducated people who are going to give them their vote, even though these politicians are driving the country into the ground. Like, I mean, you can't pay people social grants with money that you've borrowed. Like, that's not going to end well. I mean, I understand that you want to help people and lift them out of poverty. It's a natural human instinct to want to feed someone if you see a hungry person. But like, if you're going to borrow the money to do that, that's not going to end well in the long run. So, better find a better way of doing that. And I think if South Africa does go down the route where, because I don't know how this plays out. I haven't got the financial background, but I just know that I just know that there's going to come a point where this government can no longer afford to borrow money, and it's going to have to cut back on something. Like, and if it cuts back on the social grants, it's going to cause massive social unrest. I mean, if it cuts back on anything, it's going to cause massive social unrest. Like we had big protests in South Africa last year because they wanted to put one of the previous presidents in jail. I mean, this guy was as corrupt as they come, and just the threat of putting him in jail caused massive unrest. And so if there's this lifeboat that can give people a bit of hope, maybe if we can demonstrate that because I mean, generally Bitcoin is perceived as something for rich people, but if we can demonstrate that, hey, poor people have access to this too, and like you can actually protect your own future, even if you don't earn a massive amount of money, you can protect your future by saving in Bitcoin in the long run. Like, no one is going to get rich from this overnight, but if the South African currency does go into, steep or high or hyperinflation, like what we're seeing in Ghana now, where I think they've got like 40% inflation. If that happens to the South African currency, and we've already demonstrated that, this is something that poor people can use too, then that's a lifeboat for the masses. Um, where they've got, at least they've got something. Then I mean, because look, what else are they going to do? Like, at that point, people with wealth and money are already moving overseas. Like if I mean, and I experienced this because I come from a relatively privileged background. Like, everyone I know who can afford it is thinking about moving overseas because they see the writing on the wall in South Africa. Unfortunately, that's the reality. But the people that don't have wealth, what are they going to do? Like, maybe if there's this little bit of hope, and like, I think Bitcoin is hope, and if you can give people a little bit of hope, maybe that will, work to sort of mitigate a lot of the social unrest that we would see in an otherwise hopeless situation. Because I mean, people go out and burn buildings if they've got nothing to hope for, at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I think that was very powerfully put. I think people should try to build out the lifeboat in whatever way we can, whatever way that means to you, listeners. Go out there and build the Bitcoin community and the Lightning community, whatever we can do to get more people onboarded. Ideally non-custodial, but if you've got to start them somewhere and then eventually get them into non-custodial over time, it's going to help. I think it all helps. So Hermann, thank you so much for joining me. Where can people find you online if they want to find out more about you or what you're doing?
No, 100%, man. I think the best place to go is Twitter. We've got a handle on Twitter at Bitcoin Ekasi. Otherwise, there's the website, which is bitcoinekasi.com. Generally, I reply to Twitter DMs, unless it's clearly a scam message. But if it's a genuine message, I will reply eventually, maybe not straight away. But yeah, that's the best place. And thanks
Fantastic.
for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.